Welcome back to another edition of the Tribal Lines podcast. Took a detour into Branford for episode 3. It's been an electric season. There's been a lot of personalities. Really enjoying what I've been seeing so far. So Ryan, anything stand out in episode 3 off the bat? Any characters, anything like that? Any moves? I mean, we're gonna get into it, but anything right off the bat for episode 3 that kind of got your brain turning anywhere?
I think the story of episode 3 is just ultimately the fact that this freaking newbies tribe has still not won a challenge. And I think that's very frustrating for them. Now it's become less of we got unlucky twice in a row. And now, wow, we're on a streak and we need to break this or we're going to have to start really turning on each other. Um, yeah, in terms of what happened in the episode, I think there was a lot of good dynamics going on with the ambassador twists. I think the end of the arc of our booted player was interesting, and I think it was a little bit of a calm before the storm, and what I think will be a big episode 4, but definitely enjoyable watch overall.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it poses a question for me. Do the newbies suck? Or are the vets just really good, or is it just kind of the luck of the game sometimes? Where I mean, these challenges, I mean, I don't know that they've been incredibly close. Some of them have been a little bit closer than others, but do you think it's just that live game experience, the Branford experience that they just might have a little bit of a one up on these newbies, or do you think it just comes down to skill? Or
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think this fraternity's tribe does have a good mix of challenge skills. And overall, the challenges so far up to this point have been more physical. This one had you could call it a puzzle, but it's not really a puzzle. It's more of a physical, like balancing thing with the balls as well.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll talk about that a little. I think that's a little controversial, but I don't want to pour the heat on for that as well because it was very well done. It was a really cool to see like something built that was like very survivor-esque. Like
Mhm.
someone on production, probably one of the past players that helps on production, definitely made that. I think Jim told me, and I forget right now, but yeah, I, I don't know these newbies. Like you could say that, oh, maybe it's like, oh, they got to that the ball balancing portion and then they just lost that part, but they were behind going into that part. In every challenge that newbie tribe, the Parkville tribe has just been Parkside, sorry. I keep wanting to say Parkville. That Parkside tribe has always been behind out of the first section of like a obstacle course and has never caught up. Like there's been no sway.
Mhm.
So I have to put some of it on them. I can't really like connect it to one person in particular because it does seem like they're giving their best efforts, but I don't know. It can't just be that other tribe is dominating because now it's been 3 challenges in a row and they haven't had a lead. I think, to be
Yeah.
honest, I can't
Uh,
remember what last episode did they have. They might have had a lead because
I
did they
think they
win
were
the
hanging in
first
there when
match?
they were in the water. When they were in the water, I think they were kind of hanging in there. I think they definitely scored a couple points, but ultimately
Okay,
they
so
lost.
yeah, so I'm just thinking of the two like course challenges that were like more of a race. But so yeah, they were involved in the last one. But yeah, just I don't know. Can't can't get it done. I mean, do you see or feel that there's like a particular weak link on this tribe, or even in the converse, do you feel like there's a particular person on the veterans tribe that's really killing it? Like, I
Uh,
don't know.
I mean, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the vets as a cohesive group, especially in the challenges. I mean, camp life is, definitely something different, especially with all the things going on with Pat, Michelle, that we're going to dive into. But I think they're just a more balanced tribe skillfully. I think that comes with experience. It comes with kind of knowing the layout of the game, even though the game's always going to give you new things each season. But I think it's just that comfort of being there before, kind of having an idea of what to expect in a sense. But I think it also comes down to I don't know that the Parkside tribe was ever balanced to begin with, challenge wise. I don't think they're piss poor pathetic. You know what I mean? It's more of one of those things where I just think out of the gate, the vets were a stronger tribe, just from what I've seen. Just from what I've seen. And is there a weak link? I know it's came up in episodes where Josh has maybe struggled in some of the challenges, but it's also like in these games, what do you value? Right? Do you value a rock solid guy that you can trust in your core four, or is it challenge performance, right? And we're going to see what Josh's fate later on in the next couple episodes could be, because if they keep losing challenges, you got to think he could be the guy to go. So
Yeah, I mean, he has been the name that's been mentioned over and over, and some of it, I don't know, some of it just seems like he's bringing it up, like,
that's what
and
I've
it,
that's what I've
I
thought.
feel like he kind of like apologized, and that kind of has given like at least Christy and Victoria when they were targeting him, it kind of gave him an out to like put it on him, like, oh, we all know that Josh might be to blame because even Josh is admitting it. Like that's why you don't always want to do that unless it's like an extremely obvious mishap. Like in the first episode where Tasha like kicked the ball, like that was clearly like a her moment. But some of these other things, like maybe Josh could be doing here and there better. But I haven't seen anything in particular that I'd say like, oh, Josh completely messed this up. Like maybe he was not. Him and Steven had a lot of trouble bouncing those balls, but like I don't think they were coming back in that challenge anyways, to be
Mhm.
honest. So ultimately those sort of things, it's like you could have done better, but is it the reason you lost? Probably not.
Right. Yeah, couldn't agree more. We open up the episode. Brandon reports back. There's guys versus girls dynamic, right? With Tasha having her foot in both doors. Brandon really thinks that, one of the girls has the idol, thinks Josh is going to be the next to go. Um, I love this ambassador twist. I think it adds a layer. I think if we're not, I don't know where the numbers are going to go, but I don't know that we're going to see a swap. So it's nice to know, like when the merge hits, those ambassador connections could either really hurt you or really help you. And I think, Brandon was a nice person to send. I think he's very calm presence, very neutral in a sense, doesn't pose as a huge threat. But when he comes back, he reports, what he thinks he knows, what he thinks he saw. Um, and I love this twist. I think it's cool. What's your opinion on the bastard twist overall?
I think it's a good way to establish some kind of connection between the tribes, especially if they aren't going to swap at some point, which, Branford starts with smaller tribes to start the season. So usually they'll either swap in the next episode, which could be a possibility, or they won't swap at all, just because there's not many other opportunities to swap. You could swap if you swap in episode 5, then you only have a round or two of it, and then you'd have a small merge. It's kind of just like awkward timing sometimes. And you'd also be swapping with, if it was episode 5, you'd be swapping with, yeah, 10 left, and
Yeah,
you'd only get one round of it probably, and then you'd have to merge. You can't really merge later than 9, so it's either next episode or probably not at all. And I think if it is a season where there is no swap, I think and that's what I'm guessing, just because of how this twist is implemented. I think it's a good way to establish a connection between the tribes before the merge, so that there is some dialogue between the ambassadors and the newbie tribes. So if one tribe does end up in the majority, which as of now it's clearly going to be the veterans, then it isn't just an obvious pagonging situation where one tribe is going to annihilate the other, because you don't have a lot of time, especially in a short form game like this, to create connections with that other group, like right on the merge vote, when you haven't talked with them strategically the whole game, and you have like 20 minutes to do so. Like it's hard to make any big moves and not have them blow up in your face. So I think this ambassador twist really get some of those merge dynamics out of the way during the pre-merge, so that when the merge actually happens, it'll be a little more fluid in
mhm.
the moment.
Yeah, because what I don't want to see is like the final seven being all Tyler. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
no one wants to see that. And I think, like you said, when the numbers are smaller to begin with and it's really fast gameplay, sometimes you only have about 20 to 30 minutes to strategize. Those moves can really blow up in your face because you don't have 3 days out there to kind of formulate a plan with new connections. You got 30 minutes. So it's like if I'm in the majority, you want to kind of ensure your own safety until you get to a certain point where you have no choice to really kind of break up there. If you're in a great spot, it's like why am I gonna compensate? I don't want to compromise my spot here to end up voted out or on the bottom, right? So that's another dynamic to look at for sure. But while we're on this Tyler tribe, we know that there's idols out there, idols in play. Michelle, Haley, they agree that they're going to share the idol. Michelle puts it in a red towel, so if any of them need it, they can grab it. Very savvy. I can tell Michelle is a savvy player. I think it was a good idea for her to make it known to Haley that this is our idol. And the reason that I say that is because it seems like Michelle is going to need someone to really trust because she's going to be a huge threat in the merge. I wouldn't be surprised if she's one of the first people that they try to turn on because of her threat level. And it's good to know that you have other people that that you can share that information with. And I think, because she didn't have to do that.
No, and I think, yeah, I think this is where I get a little confused about Michelle's game because again, when she has this idol and she lets someone know, there's like you could play it on your ally, right? Or have your ally play it. And then if I'm Haley and I just played an idol, and I'm in a situation where I had to play an idol, and maybe my back's up against the wall, I'm gonna deflect and say, Michelle found that, and I just was able to use it. And now Michelle's the target. If Michelle is the only one that knows she has the idol, then um she can play it maybe at a later point in the game and save it. And maybe if she's in a tight spot and an ally goes out, then she lets them go and then she uses it. Or um, or she doesn't have to use it if her alliance of Danny, Haley, and her just can make it really far, and then she can use it at 5 or not at all. But um, I think where I feel stuck with Michelle sometimes in this game is I feel like she's setting herself up for the same path I've seen in past Branfords, where by this point everyone knows Michelle is a really good player. Like it's not, and there's only so much the dynamics of a two tribe season can like fluctuate from season to season. So you kind of know that like the if we get to the merge and me say Pat goes out next episode, right? And we have these groups of 3 for the merge vote
Mhm.
from the veterans tribe, and maybe they try to pick up like whichever newbies are left.
Right.
Like, there's going to be some imbalance there where either she's going to be in the majority and be the biggest target of the majority, or she's going to be in the minority and be the biggest target of the minority. Like, it feels like she's the biggest target no matter how things shake down. And her having the idol known and maybe not having the idol known, but being willing to play her idol on someone else or someone else that might expect the idol to be played on her, um, just kind of makes it a little messier for her and a little less easy to navigate when you have like maybe certain responsibilities. But I'm hoping I'm wrong because I can be very wrong, and I hope there's like a plan for the merge in that sense. And it's hard. It's hard for a veteran that's coming in with a huge target. I mean, Dennis is the other veteran who I'd say has a similar target in some ways, but Michelle has more of a idol and immunity element too, which is pretty tough to work around.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And to your point, that brings our main man Pat, right? Who's a big question mark on this tribe. Kind of like what's going on? How's Pat gonna dig himself out of this place? Who knows? I don't know how he's gonna do it. Sarah, Brandon, Danny talking about they didn't really understand why Pat would like bring up that people have brought fake things into the game. It only makes it look more fake for him. They have another team meeting. Pat says he wants to openly discuss who's the most trustworthy person on the tribe and give them the idol for the merge portion of the game. What's Pat doing? Do you think that episode 3 is getting better for him, or do you think he's digging, digging, digging even worse? Because it's almost like because now he wants to be kumbaya with the tribe. He loves this big happy family. There's a lot of things going on with that. It's where do you think Pat kind of stands at this point with the tribe? Do you think he's still easily the first to go if they lose?
Um, Yeah, I think so right now. I think it's hard. I mean, even if you vote out Pat, you either have one more challenge or you're merging next round,
Mhm.
maybe two more challenge. I don't know, something like that. So if you do feel like there's this 3-3 split, then maybe you can say, "Oh, I've been winning all these challenges. I mean, maybe I can just risk it for one tribal and delay the exhaustion that's going to be like using Pat as a swing vote." I don't think his position got really worse in this episode, but I wouldn't say it got much better.
Kind of just there, still flying in the same kind of place.
Yeah, I just feel like I don't know. I just wish he, even with all that's gone wrong so far, I wish he would just kind of accept at some point and own it and just be like, "Hey, I fucked up. I did this and this and this.
I think that would be beneficial.
Whatever."
I really do. I really do because it's one of those things where it's like you're never going to be trusted if you never show that sense of vulnerability because it all comes across as like smoke, right?
Yeah, and
Have to show
yeah,
that
exactly,
hardcore.
like, and it makes it more powerful when you do have another scheme later that oh, you admitted to when this scheme failed and then this one was successful. But when when you fuck up the first one and you never like admit to it, but everyone kind of knows it, then it's hard for them to ever respect like your moves again in a sense because you're always going to have that aura of like he doesn't know what he's doing or he messed up, and like that's fine, like you can mess up and recover, it's been done before, but sometimes you just gotta say like, "Hey, I fucked up," and sometimes you do gotta bluff as much as you can because it will be your downfall, and maybe I think he thinks it's right in this instance because if he admits it he's definitely out, but considering how likely in my opinion it is that he's out anyways if they go to tribal, I think it's worth it to give that a shot and just kind of say like, "Hey, I fucked up. If you want to vote Michelle, I still want to, but if you don't, I get it, and I still want to work with you guys." I'm talking about like the Brandon, Sarah Dennis group, and maybe we can make something happen, or you can go to. I mean, he did talk with Michelle, I believe. Was that this episode or the last episode? That
Uh,
he was kind of like
yeah, I
saying
mean they're
like,
trying to make amends at this point. Like he's trying to slowly dig himself out of it. I mean, he's gonna still throw Michelle's name out there, but I think he's still trying to maybe find a world so maybe they can work together because he wants to be seven strong, telling them what they kind of want to hear. But if I'm Pat in this situation, and this could totally be the wrong move, right? That's why he played, and I'm here talking about it, right? But if I was Pat, I go out to Brandon, Dennis, or Sarah.
you are Pat.
I am Pat. If I was that Pat, if I was long-haired, goofy Pat, who I think is awesome, by the way, Pat, if you're listening, I think you're a gem. I really do. Um,
He is.
yeah. And if I'm Pat, I'm going to Brandon or Sarah, maybe not Dennis, but I'm going to Brandon or I'm going to Sarah, and I'm saying, you know what, man, that was all bullshit. And I know that you know that. I know that you know that. And I know that everybody knows that. But like, if you boot me, it's gonna be 3-3. Let's do something. Let's make
Is he
something.
that? Is he that aware of the dynamic right now though? Because I think I don't know
Yeah,
that
you
he
gotta be,
has
bro.
picked
Like,
up
I
the
see it.
I think Dennis has more so, but I don't, and maybe that whole three, like that three side, it doesn't seem as much that the Michelle, I can't remember, did the Michelle, Haley, Danny, did any of those three talk about like a three versus three side? I know Dennis did.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's definitely come up. May have missed it, but like, I feel like it's pretty like at this point, I think it's kind of known where like, we're one big tribe, we're winning, we're on that high. Hopefully we can get to the merge seven strong, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I'm Brandon. I trust Sarah and Dennis the most. I'm Michelle. I trust Danny and Haley the most. Right. And it's like and it probably is likewise for the rest of the three. I think if they were really to have that, have that conversation come out in the air, I think that it would come out that those are the two sides and that Pat would be left in the middle to pick a side or they vote 6-1. I don't know. But
Who do you think Pat? Do you think Pat by default feels more comfortable with the the Dennis, Sarah, Brandon tribe just because Michelle was his target, or do you think that
Yes, and
maybe
I also
he
think that's a
could
better
work
group.
something out? Yeah.
I think that's just overall a better group for him. I think he blends better into that group. I think there's more avenues of working relationships for him in that group. It's not a knock on Danny, Michelle, or Haley, but I could see like a Pat Brandon. I know that maybe Dennis and Pat have worked together in the past. I don't know how good that was for either of them. I don't know how bad it was for either of them. But what I do know is that there's some establishment there made already. So it's kind of just comes down to where the dynamics really lie and what's what is everyone's truth out there at that time and because for me it's one of those things where I would love to see Pat pick a side. I would hate to see a 6-1 if they go to tribal. You know what I mean? Because I think it just adds a lot of different fun things as a viewer if we don't get a little landslide Pat vote there because he's given us so much entertainment. I really want to see if he's going to go out, it better be epic.
It adds a lot of, like, conflict to his character if he survives. Like, is it a situation where he can recover and make some moves in this game, that he has a story arc to bring himself to admit his mistakes at the end and see how he has grown from it throughout? That'd be a great final tribal thing. Or is it something where his mistakes early on just carry and meander throughout the game, and he ends up either he could potentially end up just as a losing finalist because he never like recovered the game respect that he sort of got hurt with early on. So I think it's more interesting if he survives, but it's definitely just a good send off and provided some entertainment for which could have been. I mean, a tribe like this that's won 3 immunities in a row, it can be the sort of thing where you're just kind of bored, really bored by episode 3. And it was a little bit more repetitive this episode, but overall, I think the Pat dynamic, while it's been the main storyline, has been fairly engaging.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into this immunity challenge. They have an immunity challenge. There's some things I want to bring up with this challenge for sure. Steven and Josh end up on the boards with the trying to get the ball inside the holes. Same with Michelle and Haley. I was watching it, and I noticed that Michelle's hand was on the board and not on the rope. I don't know if production missed it. I don't know if that was like a rule where you could grab the board wherever you want. But I really got to think that like you got to have your hand on the rope there. And this is not a knock on production. It's a hard job. It's a lot going on. It's not a knock at all. But as a viewer, it poses a question of like, if her hand was on the rope, do they still win that challenge? Right?
Yeah, it's the sort of thing, and I think Jim maybe sent this in the comments of the episode, that like you you can miss those things in the moment when you don't have like a huge like team. It is unfortunate. I would like to think that Jim definitely has enough respect for the game, and not even like to think Jim does, and that he wouldn't have allowed that if he had noticed it in the moment, just because it's clearly there's ropes coming off the end of those. He didn't. We don't hear him like he doesn't put in the episode like him explaining the challenge, but I'm sure he did say that you had to utilize the ropes, and clearly it's definitely a lot easier when you're not using them, just because like your center of balance, when it's a lot closer to the object you're balancing, it's you have a lot more control, and when you have
Yeah.
the rope, it's definitely a struggle. And I would have preferred to see the challenge with the learning curve that it takes to use the ropes, because I don't think like Steven and Josh were like, I don't think it was like awful, like how much they were struggling. Like I think something like that is hard, but
Definitely. Curve. Yeah.
the other tribe, there wasn't a crazy learning curve when Michelle had her half, especially when Haley was holding the rope. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm surprised that was missed, but it's a what can you do? And yeah, I mean it gave the veterans another win, and unfortunately the newbies sent to tribal once more. And I'm sure. I mean, nobody recognized in the moment, or I think there would have been some kind of redo or something. Like I think that's the sort of thing that if
Yeah.
I was on the newbie tribe, I would have been calling for a change. I did have a I had a challenge complaint one time when I was playing, and That happens. I mean, I've hosted seasons where I've had players challenge complain. Some are valid, some aren't. It's just part of running what's not a major production. And you know, on the real show, they have challenge complaints. They just don't. They just edit those out. You don't realize.
Exactly. And yeah, like, right. This isn't CBS. We don't have production eyes everywhere. We're working with what we got here. Branford does an incredible job of painting the story for us, of giving us, great content. And, but, at the end of the day, it's a game and that was missed. And might have been the difference for the Parkside tribe of, this is a numbers game, right? And when the numbers are already super thin, every tribal, I mean, doesn't matter what game you're playing, every tribal council counts. But in this game, I feel like it's like amplified. Like, you start the game with 14 people, you probably won't swap. You're gonna merge at like, if I had to guess, 10,
10 or 9, yeah.
right? So everything counts. And it's just a shame that it happened. But like you said, is what it is.
Hmm.
Like you said, it is what it is. And, Parkside's going to go to tribal. Parkside's going to go back to tribal. Danny has chosen to be the ambassador for this round. Um, so we'll see what kind of goes on there. I just want to kind of get into the Tyler Tribe post challenge because there were some things that I kind of wanted to touch on there. Pat holds his weight in challenges. Pat does hold his weight in challenges. And, Pat's happy that everyone's a big, happy family. Comments how, the fans at home are probably shaking their heads at what he's been doing lately, and he's going to try to recover. Right. And I hope that we can see that recovery, and as to your point earlier on, they end up shaking hands. Pat, Michelle, they shake hands. They're trying to make up. It's probably all fake on Michelle's end. It's probably all fake on Pat's end, but anything to kind of cement themselves as a working relationship for whatever reason, it might be a good idea, right? But if they want to say 7 strong and they're confident that they're going to win, then whatever. But all I know in a game like this, it's good to have options. So, I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
powerful
Also,
they are, but
ultimately, when you've been winning every challenge, you come back to camp. I mean, at some point, I would, if I were Michelle, I would go like talk to them too, because like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Just ignore each other for every round? Like you know, there's like this whole thing going on, and not that they weren't talking before, but I think it was a little awkward, and so just bridging the ice and just a minute, and even if nothing happens of it, at least you tried. You had a conversation. You gave it a shot. And, shit happens, but ultimately, um, I don't know. I think the Tyler tribe. I don't know what's gonna happen with Pat. I really don't. I'm very intrigued on what his first tribal is gonna be like. But as for now, good for the Tyler tribe, keeping the kumbaya. Not the kumbaya, but I guess they still have the Pat to deal with. They'll never be kumbaya as long as he's there. But keeping it chill and they're having a good time. So happy for them.
yeah, absolutely. And we are at the Tyler camp, seeing how things are shaking out. People are having conversations. Mr. Dennis. Dennis goes, sees a string inside of a tree where the idol was. So he knows that someone has it, but he doesn't think that Pat has it because he thinks Pat has a fake idol. He immediately suspects it's Michelle. Kind of goes up to Michelle, tells her about the string, asks if she's, knows anything, and she just pretends like she has no idea. She pretends to be very shocked. If you're Dennis, do you buy it?
No, I
Not for a
don't.
second, right?
No, I mean, I don't know. It might not be Michelle. He's right. I don't know if it's perfectly true to say it's definitely Michelle. It's definitely the favorite to be it, and he wouldn't be wrong to assuming that. But wow, like what a mistake for Michelle to pull that off the tree. Like she knew it was attached to the tree, right? Like in some way, like I can't imagine there was like tape on the back as well. So to pull that off and leave the string there, wow, I'm amazed that Dennis noticed that. Like I'm kind of impressed by that, like that he was basically able to, without the clue, because he didn't have the clue, find like an idle location, and it wasn't as big a thing to see. It was just the string.
Yeah.
So respect to Dennis. I think that's even harder than finding the idol. Obviously, it took longer, but yeah, great reads and that whole situation like perfectly read by him in
Yeah,
in this episode.
Yeah, to your point with Dennis too, like I don't know if this is a hot take. I know Dennis has played Branford a couple times. Has Dennis won?
Dennis has not won.
Has
No,
Dennis made the final
he
tribal council?
he. I think in season 2 or 3, maybe. I don't know. I don't. I'm not up to date on my early Branford history, but Dennis has lost a final tribal. I think he's been a final juror. He's went out in a rock draw, been first boot. So he's had the whole experience, I'm pretty sure. I think he's
Oh,
been final juror. I'm not as sure about that one, but definitely lost final tribal, rock draw, first boot, the
I
whole
think we're gonna
shebang.
see Dennis at the end of the game. That's all I'm gonna say.
I agree. I think we see Dennis in the end game in this one. I'm really impressed with him so far. I think he's really keeping a calm head, a cool head, a chill persona. I'm not saying that he's going to win, but I think we see him in, I'll say, the final six at
Yeah,
least,
I was gonna
and
say the
he
final
might,
five. So yeah, right
and we'll
around there.
see. We'll by the time we get there, we'll have a better sense of how the other players perceive him. Is he a final five or four, or six boot that because he's a threat to win, or maybe has he become a little messier along the way, and maybe people are a little less worried about him reaching the end in this one because the jury will be a little frustrated. But as of right now, yeah, I'm impressed with Dennis's game, especially after last season, where I think he would himself think that he didn't have a great showing.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll switch gears to the Parkside Tribe because they're gonna go to tribal again. They're used to it. At this point, you got to be thinking like Tyler's itching to maybe go to tribal, right? So, Parkside, a familiar place for my friends over at the Parkside Tribe, going to go back to tribal. Tasha at first kind of seems like she wants to keep Victoria, keep the tribe strong, valuing that strength, and I think that it speaks to maybe Tasha's opinion on Josh's challenge strength. I think she's so much easier to kind of just ditch Josh and keep Victoria here. Also, kind of worried about the numbers with the women versus the men, stuff like that as well. And Victoria immediately, buys it, thinks it's going to be a 4-1 vote. I found it very interesting when Danny comes over for ambassador. Victoria tells him everything, right? Tells him about the 2-2-2 vote. Christy went home with an idol. She was left out of the vote. But Josh is right there in the wings, listening in. And Josh does what he does, and he goes over, and Victoria can't be trusted. She's telling Danny everything. Where you at with that?
I mean, great move from Josh. The right thing to do. I mean, I think that's his best angle, especially if he did feel in a corner. Um, I wonder how much Josh really was in a corner again because I feel like the natural continuation is to just vote Victoria. I think that's the naturally easier move here, despite losing 3 times in a row. You gotta have enough faith. And again, despite Josh's shortcomings, I don't think he's been awful enough so far that I think, man, he is the sole reason we have not won a challenge yet. Like he
No,
fell off the
he's not.
thing in the second challenge, but someone did from the other tribe too. I think Sarah maybe. I don't know, but yeah, he's just not been. And I don't. I think Victoria. Well, Josh could be the boot, and I'd understand it. I think Victoria's the natural boot, so I think yeah. When if you do feel in a corner and you see Victoria doing that, that's the perfect angle. And I think while Victoria probably was the preference from the start of this vote and throughout this episode, despite the natural conversations of whether or not it is the right move. Um, I think it was sunk for her when that was revealed, and I think Tim is the one who really emphasizes that and how that really pushed his decision
Yeah,
because ultimately trust is one of the biggest values in a game like this, and saying stuff to a tribe that's kind of been your rival the whole game unprompted about the entire dynamics when they've been generally trying to keep them light. And this is something, didn't she say stuff in the last episode too, or was that more Christy?
it was a lot of Christy for sure. I think that Victoria kind of cemented herself as the boot here when that did get back to Tim because Tim's a very strong player. Tim is not only very perceptive, but I think he's very persuasive. I think Tim has really good reads. I think he knows where he stands on the tribe. I think he knows where all the dynamics lie. Um, and I think that in the time just valued Josh and his loyalty to Josh. And I feel like Tim also just wanted to make sure he was staying loyal to Steven and Tasha as well, who were, I mean, Steven wanted to keep Josh. I know that for sure. I know Tasha was kind of going back and forth. She really valued Victoria's strength and challenges, to whereas Josh might have just been a weaker link at that time for them. So we see Tasha kind of going both ways, but ultimately the vote's going to land on our friend Victoria. So Victoria is going to be voted out of this episode. And it sucks to see because I was really high on Victoria going into it. I saw some like pregame stuff. I really like Victoria as a player. I think the cards were dealt a little bit differently. That there's obviously a different outcome for her. Uh, but yeah, I mean, Steven really wanted to keep his four. Steven got his way again.
Yeah.
Really wanted to keep his four strong. Vote off Victoria. He's nervous because I feel like Steve was nervous that like not only did he write her name down, but she would be the first to turn on the original Park.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you don't want is someone that rather than trying to pull like that either that Michelle side or that Dennis side to your group, that they're gonna just try to jump to one side on their own and throw the rest of the newbies to burn. Like that's your worst case situation if you're on this Parkside tribe going to the merge. So yeah, that's definitely a clear worry. And when you already have the pre-established alliance that Steven has with the one he has with Tasha and Josh, and also just Tim in the fold, it's kind of evolved from that three that Park trio in the first episode, kind of like a foursome. It feels like it's more fluid who's meeting with who. It's not like that three has been meeting specifically over and over. So it feels like it's become more of a foursome and evolved from that. And Tim's kind of integrated into it, especially since Steven seems to really seems like Steven individually has that role with Tim, and Tasha individually has a role with Tim, and then Steven and Tasha with each other. So, and then they also both Tosh and Steven have things with Josh. So really the only missing link there, I think, is Josh and Tim. So definitely if this tribe does go to another tribal, I think that's gonna be like the dynamic is Tim versus Josh and see where that goes from there. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
right.
yep.
Yeah, but Victoria, I think I felt like she just didn't play aggressive enough socially early on and was always picking up the pieces from there. And when she was already down in a bad spot, she never like did anything bold enough to reach out of it. Like sometimes you just got to shoot your shot. And I think she was trying to play a little too smooth through the whole thing when she was not in a position to play smooth.
Mhm. I loved when they got to tribal and Jim reveals that right before the vote that Christie's idol was fake. See all the shocked faces.
Yeah.
I always love a moment like that. Tim also says in the voting booth, he's going to do whatever Tasha and Steven decide because he wants to prove that loyalty and show that loyalty and maintain that loyalty. So it shows me, I mean, he didn't say that, to someone else. He said that to the camera where you're truthful, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
supposed to be truthful at least. So shows me that that's a strong three, right? So if they lose again, and it is a Josh versus Tim, and it ends up being a Josh or a Tim, Steven and Tasha feel like are at least guaranteed the merch in that regard, which would be cool to see. But I do want to ask you, I don't have any information about any episodes before they come out, but if I told you that I could look in a crystal ball and I knew that the winner was from Parkside, who would you think that it is?
It was from Parkside. I think I'm gonna say this as a newer member of the podcast, but I do feel good about Steven. I think Tasha, I would say, is played this tribe the best so far. Like like if you're just looking at this tribe. But ultimately, like if you're playing the best or maybe the strongest like pre-merge, people are gonna know and that's gonna catch up to you in the merge. Like usually, I mean, best is a strong word, but usually the person that's leading the pack pre-merge is not going to be leading the pack the whole game necessarily, especially when you're joining the game, when you're joining the merge in a minority position, most likely. So that's kind of a hard spot for her to be in, especially if maybe the Tyler tribe does stick to their numbers. And Tim, in a similar sense, is kind of is like a scrappier version. Like just feels like you talk to Tim for a bit and you realize that he's really good. And I think Steven's in a good spot in between those types of players where I feel like he's capable, but he hasn't been like overly aggressive or trying to be too scrappy in some ways. Like he establishes alliances early and he's basically just been able to have very cool conversations, hasn't had to do anything crazy, but is also like respected by the other players in the game. I think he's very medium, and I think Survivor you always want to be as medium as possible.
No, I think that's a great point. I would have said the same thing, and it's no bias. I know Steven and I podcast together, but like I said, I know nothing. And not only that, I'm just a viewer watching this game the same way, and I'm viewing everyone in the same light. And I do think that Steven's in the best spot, in the best position to win this game if it is a Parkside that's going to make a run. The reason that I say that, very similar to you, I just think that Tim and Tasha poses bigger threats, right? I think you want to be medium. I love that. I've never heard that, and I love that because you're so right. It's like the loudest guy in the room, the most strategic guy, the most savvy guy in the room, savvy gal. It's not good, especially if you're having an electric pre-merge like Tasha, really, really good pre-merge. People are going to see that. Same with Tim. Tim was almost first boot, right? And Tim's the type of
Yeah,
that's more, I think, a little bit more outspoken than Steve. I think that if Steve plays it right, he might be able to make it out of this. And I think any three of them, and even I don't want to discredit Josh yet because Josh, it could be Tim that goes before Josh. Who knows? I just have a feeling it would be Josh. Um, but anyone really has that ability to kind of slip through the cracks there. It's just going to be tough when the numbers aren't on your side. So
yeah. And here's the flip side of that coin, briefly.
yeah,
If you're in that, if you're Steven and you're not like a larger target, and you are in like an early minority in that merge, Steven might be an easier vote in that sense because you want to leave the other two as targets, whether you're going to use them as a vote in like a vote soon, or maybe they're more aggressively pursuing social connections and succeeding with them than Steven. Not that I think Steven isn't capable. I think all three of them and Josh as well have been very capable of being like aggressive when they need to. I think Josh a little less. I feel like Josh had a really good episode one and is kind of sat not I don't know. I just feel like he sat on his laurels a little more and I just don't I feel like he kind of iced out that the two girls and maybe that was because they were going for M and he was kind of put in that position and I feel like the others even if they haven't been working with them as much have just at least taken opportunities to hear them out and I always hate that as a player. I think in my season I don't think it's always the right thing but I definitely was trying to hear out the minority even if I wasn't always looking to work with them and I think that benefited me a lot
no,
but
I was
sometimes it doesn't.
right. Sometimes it doesn't. That's the name of the game. Victoria goes home. We got Parkside down in numbers. But yeah, I mean, it was a good episode, kept me engaged, and that's gonna be it for episode 3. Episode 3 was a good one. I'm excited for episode 4. Hopefully, Parkside can win a challenge. That would be great. I would love to see Parkside win a challenge. I would like to see more idle hunting with the Parkside tribe, seeing what's going on there. And from the scenes from our next episode, it looks like that's going to be a thing. So excited to get into episode 4 for y'all next time. And Ryan, anything else you want to say before we get on out of here?
Not much. I'm excited for the next episode. Let's get Parkside a win, please. If
Parkside
not,
win. We'll
we're
see.
gonna have some tough decisions.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. We want to see it all play out. So we appreciate everyone for listening, and we will see you all next time.